They do say that they save the best for last, so here I am batting cleanup. Eric, you're a heavyweight in my book. Well, he is. He's a heavy thinker. He's a deep thinker. And I really appreciated what you said. I didn't even know that story about Yale. That's the kind of thing that I load up on that. It gets me so riled up. And it should all of us, to understand we are at war. We are absolutely at war, and we have failed to recognize that. And we're only now, just in my opinion, just starting to perceive that we're at war. I had a guy on the radio. I do a radio show, and it's a podcast, and it's a YouTube channel, and it's on Rumble, and it's on Locals. And anyway, I had this guy on, and he's written this book about how Democrats and Republicans really just have to work together. And he said, because we're all in this together, and we should come together because we all want the same thing, ultimately. And I said, you know what? That would work for me if I believed we all wanted the same thing, but I'm not convinced of that anymore. And he said, well, I mean, there's violence on both ends of the spectrum. And I said, no, there isn't. And he was gobsmacked. I said, where is there right-wing violence? Where is it? And of course, he pointed to January 6th. And I said, nope, that's been debunked. Where else? And he said, well, I just gave you one. And I said, no, you didn't. And he just continued with his story. Here's the problem, folks. We believe in life. They believe in death. If that's your enemy, compromise is not possible. That's the problem. And as Christians, we don't want to admit that, because that is a very difficult thing to admit. We want to get along with we want to love our neighbors. But if they want us dead, that's a problem. That's problematic. I had so much to say. I loved when you said, Lord, lead me, because that's been the trajectory of my life. I was telling some of the people here a short story about me. I was asked to leave the stage halfway through my presentation because I had antagonized some people. So they asked me to leave the stage, and the woman asked me after I left, how'd you feel? And I said, well, I felt horrible. I felt really insecure. I mean, I am insecure. It's hard. It is hard to stand up for the truth. It's not easy. But I'll tell you a quick story. When I was in the 4th grade, I had learned a little bit extra math, because I do love math, Eric. And we were asked a question by the teacher. What is 10 divided by 1/2 plus 2? And he started pointing at the kids. What do you think it is? And the child said, 7. I said, okay, 7. What do you think it is? 7. And you, do you think it's 7? Yes. And you, and you, and you. And he goes all the way around, and he gets to me, and you think it's 7? And I said, no. I'm a 4th grader, very shy, petite. And he said, well, you don't think it's 7? Everybody says it's 7. What do you think it is? And I said, 22. And he said, well, that's ridiculous. Everybody says it's 7. She thinks it's 22. What should we do, class? Should we throw her out the window? At which point I was like, wait, what? I didn't know that was on the table. And then, of course, he said, actually, class, she's right. 10 divided by 1/2 is 20. And then when you add 2, it's 22. And that was the first time I stood up for the truth. When you stand up for the truth, it emboldens you. I tried to say this before, and I think I goofed it up. If you look at school records, they count schools as proficient when children pass 38% of the questions correctly. So they've redefined the word proficient. So when you say, well, we go to a good school, you don't know what you're talking about. There is no such thing. Kate Corrigan came on my show recently. Has anybody here heard of Kate Corrigan? She was at a Jesuit school for undergraduate, and she was to graduate this past year, and she had a religious exemption to the COVID shots. And they had given her a pass because she claimed a religious exemption, that was fine. And then they said, oh, but if you want to walk in graduation, you need to get the shots. And she said, no, I have the religious exemption. And they said, no, that doesn't work for the graduation. And she said, oh, yes, by George, it does. And talk to my lawyer. And so they changed their website. Did not tell her that they changed the website, but they did, to allow her to participate in graduation. They rescinded the invitation that they had given her to speak at graduation. This is a Jesuit university, mind you. It is a religious institution where they are teaching religious leaders. And she took so much hate from these soon-to-be and current religious leaders about what an abomination she was, claiming a religious exemption from an experimental vaccine. But she's standing. She's standing. There are people who are willing to stand. I invite you to join them. We need more of them. Boy, she took a lot of heat. I will say this, and I think I got this from CL. Conformity is not unity. They claim they want unity, they do not. They want conformity that is completely different. That is communism, pure and simple. The artwork is communistic, pure and simple. The pornography in our schools is one of the 45. The 45 communist goals that they set for themselves that was admitted into the congressional record, and you ought to be familiar with them because they have achieved every last one of them. One of them was get control of our schools, and they have done it. So they've done it how? Well, Marxism has invaded all the echelons, upper echelons of universities. Our teachers are being indoctrinated with Marxism. That says that no matter what they tell you to do, you do what you think is right, and what you think is right is Marxism. So we've got Marxism that is now permeated all the way into the lower institutions because that's where the teachers are now. They've got control of the unions. I don't think that comes as a surprise. Teachers' unions are controlled by Marxists and communists, which is one and the same, by the way. Let's be clear. Communism, Marxism, progressivism, liberalism, and liberalism is an abomination because that's not really what the word means, but they've changed the meaning. Progressivism, it's all the same thing. Fascism, Antifa, it's all the same thing. It's only one thing. And really what it is aggression towards God. That's really what it is, the desire to be God rather than to serve God. So there are efforts to get the unions out of schools. My understanding is that if you can get 50% plus one of your teachers to not join the union, they're out. You can kick the unions out of your local schools. Now, I don't believe in sending children into schools, but I do believe we have work to do in the schools because they are still there. So if you can convince your teachers to not join the union, and you have to be stealth about it because the unions will come down very hard on them. As you might recall, the head of the National Educators Association in New York City just a few years ago stood there. This is during the big confrontation about COVID, about Common Core, because the teachers' unions wanted Common Core because they're communist. And by the way, what parent doesn't want their child to be common, right? Seriously, it's baked into the name, folks. This isn't rocket science. This is like, why would I want that in my school? And they couldn't tell you. They just said, well, the test scores will go up. They didn't test it. They were making complete lies. They were making claims that were complete lies. So the head of the teachers union stood up there, and I'm quoting, he said, "I will knock you on the ground and I will punch you in your face before I let you take away Common Core." Now, that's bullying. That's what that is. Well, he's a communist. You go, okay, he's a communist, but he got to the head of the teachers union. But, I mean, that's just one guy, right? No! 3,000 or more teachers in that hall cheered him on. Yes, we will punch people in their faces if they take away our Common Core. That's communism. Those are your teachers. So Moms for Liberty is an organization that has started to support moms who want to run for their local school boards. The unions are in charge of the school boards because when you get voted onto the school board, they pay for you to go and be trained. Isn't that nice? To be trained how to behave on a school board. Guess who trains you? The unions. And what do you think the unions train you to do? Rubber stamp everything the superintendent wants. And what do you think the superintendent wants? Anything the union wants. You see, it's all of a piece. They've woven it very nicely. 27% of children in California schools are gender non-conforming. That's 1 in 4. That's 1 in 4 damaged children. Do you think this will end well? That is frightening. Schools think that you can't train your own children. Schools teach that you can't, right? We talked about that earlier. That you basically, because unless you've been purposely instructed in it, this is the school paradigm. So it's baked in. You don't understand it, you just know it viscerally. It's just in your bones. You can't do it unless somebody actually taught you how to do it. But now I've told you that that's a lie, and I'm setting you free from that. You can do anything you set your mind to. And boy, it's all out there on YouTube, so you literally can do anything you set your mind to, okay? But this is what I really want you to understand. When you feel incompetent, and tell this to the parents that you're going to be talking to, because you will be talking to people, and you will be telling them to watch my TV show, and you will be telling them to get my book, and you will be telling them to start doing their own research, right? When you talk to them, and they say, I just feel like I'm going to fail. I feel like I can't do it. Say, good. The school made you feel that way. Don't do that to your children. You feel that way because you're schooled and you're not educated. Save your child from that. So when you feel incompetent and incapable, and boy, I tell you, that was me. The only reason I went through with it was because they were screwing up so badly, and I wasn't going to let that happen on my watch. So I took it on, and it made me this strong. Somebody who cries in front of people. But if you feel incompetent, that is a result of the school. So you know you're doing the right thing by not sending them in. Does that make sense? So you embrace it. And then I have parents say, well, I don't know enough about the Bible. Ladies and gentlemen, I was raised as a secular Jew, okay? I knew nothing about the Bible. So 1.5 years into my homeschool journey, I sent my kids to a little private Christian school because I knew that they were going to be able to give my children the religion that I couldn't do, right? I wasn't going to tell this story, but I will. My middle son's my mathematician. When he started first grade, we got him the first grade math book. He finished it on Halloween. Do the math. He finished it on Halloween. He would come to me and say, Mommy, I want to do 30 pages today. And I would say, okay. He went into this little school. They put him on the treadmill. Children are not widgets. You can't put them on a conveyor belt, right? And that's the school. The school's a conveyor belt. And some schools are conveyor belts to prison, right? They're prison prep centers, right? They put him on the same conveyor belt at this little Christian school, so it was Christians who were doing it now. God bless them. And I lasted 6 weeks. I went in to have a parent-teacher meeting. And by the way, these stories are in my book. But I talked to the teacher. I wanted to make sure that I was holding up my end of the bargain because it was a hybrid. So I was homeschooling 3 days a week, and then he was in school for 2 days a week. And so was I, holding up my end of the bargain because they knew better than I did. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm totally insecure, right? And she regaled me with 10 minutes of how well-behaved my child was, how well-behaved he was, how well-behaved he was. He was very well-behaved. He was so well-behaved that she sat him next to the disbehaved children, the misbehaved child, and he had a good effect on the misbehaved child, and thank goodness for that because my child was so well-behaved. And the whole time, my Holy Spirit, whatever, the voice inside, my schizophrenia, whatever you want to call it, is talking to me and saying, that's not his job. That's not why you're here. He should be asking questions. He should want to learn. I would rather hear that he's the most disruptive child. I want to ask a question. Let me talk. What are you saying? And I took him out. I decided that day. I said, okay, so we're at cross purposes. Their purpose is discipline and behavior modification, and it is. Every school, that's their purpose. And my purpose is education. Is this clear? So I took him out. And on Monday, I sat down with him with his math book, and I said, here we go. Let's do this one. And he said, no, Mommy, I can't. It's too hard. I can't do it. My math whiz. She broke him. She broke him. I don't know how she broke him. To this day, he doesn't remember that. But he cried. He said, I can't do it. It's too hard, Mommy. So I took the math book and I put it away for a full week. And after a week, I took it back out again. I said, I turned back a couple chapters. I said, hey, let's try this. And we were fine. Totally fine. Problem resolved. But I'll tell you something. I learned a big lesson there. And I had somebody breathe into me because I had a lot of guilt about all of that. And I had somebody breathe into me because we as Christians, as believers, we need to converse. That's why they don't want you to go to church, because they don't want you communicating with each other, okay? And we need that. And I was talking to a woman, I told her the story, and she said, oh my gosh, Sam, isn't that wonderful that God allowed you to make that mistake to prove to yourself that you're enough? And I went, oh my goodness, I'd never seen it that way. But that's exactly what it was. 6 weeks that I never need to revisit this again, right? And I'm done. And it's on me, and I'm happy to do this because this is where God wants us. By the way, the Bible's very clear, very clear. It says in several areas, parents, raise your children. Parents, bring up your child in the way that he should go. Parents, it's on you. Parents, the education is on you. Never once does it say, make sure the government educates your child for you. Never once does it say, churches, you must educate children. Twice it says, grandparents, educate the child. Educate your grandchildren. The Bible's very clear on that. We ought to read our Bibles more. So, we talked about the loss of the institution of parenting. I want to say it's not too late. I want to tell you that as grandparents, you have a role. If that means that you have to somehow rekindle a relationship or work closer, work harder to get that relationship, then do it. But it's not too late. You know why? Because children are clever. They're more clever than we give them credit for. And so we shouldn't be sacrificing our children. You know, it's interesting. You should, as the parent, you should sacrifice for your children. As the grandparent, you sacrifice for your children. When I told you the story that my kids come sit on my bed and just pour into me, the most ridiculous stories, I'm sorry, they're just dumb. You know, kids are dumb. They have dumb stuff happening. And, you know, this person said this thing and that person wanted to go to the beach and then, you know, or I can't even, right? And then I have the engineer, and he has to explain everything. And boy, if you interrupt him, you're going to hear it all over again. So don't interrupt him. Let him finish, right? But I sit there, and that is a sacrifice, right, on my part. It's not really, but I just button it up, and I just listen. And there's a huge blessing in that. So we're called to sacrifice for our children. You know who else sacrifices? The military. Do we have any military members in the room? Could you stand? And we just want to applaud you. She's not going to stand, but we'll applaud you anyway. I know, it's a cheap way to get applause, but it has to be done. I want to thank you for your service, and I want to point out to people, Jesus said that the greatest love that you can show is for a man to lay down his life for his friend. That is what our military does every day. That is why the left hates our military. Not to mention that it makes us stronger as a nation and they want to see us fail. The left doesn't like the story of sacrifice. They like the story. I had somebody on the radio and she pointed this out. She said, they like the victimhood of Jesus. That's why they claim to be victims. They like the innocence of Jesus. That's why they go after children. That brought me up short. So now we have an entire society that is too scared to try because they're taught in school that you have to raise your hand to ask a question. And if you have to raise your hand to ask a question, what does that really tell you? First of all, it makes it visceral. It puts it right in your body. You don't speak out of turn. You have to raise your hand. You have to ask permission to ask a question. But let me ask you this. What does that actually teach you? Anybody? What do you learn from that? Anybody? Order, submission, obedience, right? It teaches you also not to question. Don't question. You see that in our culture today? Just follow blindly, just blind obedience. Don't question. Don't question Fauci. You notice who's questioning Fauci? Rand Paul. He's the only one. Do you know that we learn from our mistakes? My husband caddied for very wealthy people while he was growing up, and he used to ask them, you know, how'd they get their success? And every one of them said to him, well, I failed a whole lot. Michael Jordan failed a whole lot before he perfected his basketball technique. But now we're afraid to fail. Look how pensive you all are when I ask you a question. You're like, I don't know how to answer that. What if I'm wrong, right? And I get it. But you have to understand that's you embodying the schooling that you've had. And I'd like to encourage you to look for ways to just break out of that. Venture out. Try something different. Try going into a store without the mask on, for instance. You guys are pretty free here, but, right? Try something new. Instead of educating for wisdom, and of course, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? Instead of doing that, they're educating for knowledge. Then they transferred it to work skills, and that's where we are today. And so they teach evolution. And off of what Eric was saying, I want to make sure you understand. And this is what you say to them. Evolution doesn't believe in equality. No, I'm serious. God is the author of freedom. Jesus wrote the book on freedom, and evolution does not support freedom or equality. So you take your evolution, you put it where the sun don't shine, because you don't have a leg to stand on when you're talking about equality or equity, or anything for that matter. Because if you're an atheist, you don't care, like Eric was saying. But they're teaching that crap to little children. They're teaching little children, you're meaningless. You're just a collection of accidents. By the way, don't bully. What is evolution? Survival of the fittest, but don't bully. Survival of the fittest, rule of the land, but don't bully. Do you see the conundrum it sets up in the mind of a child? And here's the thing, children are so smart. They know they're being lied to, but they don't know what to do with that. They don't know where to channel it, and so they go riot in the streets. I was tutoring a young woman, Kaylee, in calculus. And she came to me. I had gotten a pretty good reputation as a calculus tutor. I'd had a lot of success. And so she came to me with tears in her eyes. She said, I'm failing the course and I don't want to have to take it again. And the professor said that if I can just get a D- on the final, he will pass me and then I won't have to take the course again. Can you at least just get me up to a D-? Because this stuff it doesn't work for me. Now, I was a student at Duke University, which is, let's just say Yale is the Duke of the North. So, So I knew she was a smart kid. There's no way she's that dumb. I said, let's give it a try. And I tutored her. And she got a B+ on the final. And that's not a testament to my tutoring skills. That's a testament to simply reading the book, because that's all I did with her. Folks, if you're afraid of having to teach math or whatever it is, there are books about it, and you just read them, and the answers are right there. Like, it's just not that hard. Okay, calculus, yeah, because then it really takes some thought. But I have faith in you. I know you can do it. But if you don't want to do it, that's why we have Kumon and Mathnasium and all of the math centers that are sprouting up everywhere. And by the way, why are they sprouting up everywhere? Because the schools aren't getting it done, right? The evidence is right there. So it's teachable. People said to me, I don't know how to teach the Bible. You know what? There's a really good book on how to teach the Bible. It's called the Bible. You just start reading it. You get your kids to read it. They stumble through. Takes a good deal of patience to wait for the child to try to pronounce all the names. Jeremiah, yeah, keep going. But it's fun. I want to encourage, let's see. I don't want to take too much time because I know it's getting late because Eric talks so long. Teach your children to argue, please. Teach them to argue. Don't let them win. Teach them to argue and only let them win when they win. The first time my son won an argument with me, oh man, I was so angry, but I was so proud. I wasn't really angry. He deserved the win. He figured it out. I taught my kids debate. I teach debate, and my daughter is an extreme introvert, and we had prepared her debate, and she was getting ready to go up, and she lost it. She was out in the hall crying, and she said, "Mommy, I can't do this. I can't do it." And I said, "Yes, you can." And I'll shortcut it. I talked her through it. I said, "You've got to do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Everybody's waiting. You're just going to read what you wrote. It's all ready. You just go through." She did the entire debate with tears streaming down her cheeks. That was really hard for me because I was the only one in that place insisting that she do it. It was all me, baby. But I wasn't going to let her lose. When we allow our children to quit, that's on us. And the next time she got up to debate, it was the weirdest thing because it was the same people in the audience and it was the same group of kids debating because it was a very small class. And she owned the room. And everybody was sort of like, what the crap? What just happened? She owned the room. She not only did that, she went up and maneuvered the guy into admitting something that just won her the debate in one fell swoop, and he knew it. She said, I think the question was, so killing is wrong, and he said, yes. And she said, always? And he said, yes. And she said, well, what about in time of war? And he went, because he knew he just lost it, because he knew he had to say, no, in times of war, of course, killing is justified. And she won. We have to teach our children to debate, because that's what Christians should be good at, and we're no longer good at it because the churches have slacked off on teaching us the truth, sadly. I would encourage you all to get involved in apologetics. In fact, Larry's book, The Faith of Christopher Hitchens, is excellent, and that's how I know Larry. I wanted to mention that. I also wanted to mention that Bonhoeffer, all my kids have read Bonhoeffer. It is a phenomenal, every child should read Bonhoeffer. We should, look, the reason that they want to take Christ out of the marketplace of ideas is because he's a hero. They want to replace him with Superman or Iron Man because that's not attainable. But Christ was fully human to give us the stamina and the courage to stand our ground. He was not only God, he was human, he was flesh, to give us the strength, the fortitude to stand our ground like he did, even though we are not sinless. And they hate that, and that's why they go after the military. And we have to give our children those kinds of heroes to look for and to emulate. Are the war heroes. Who's read Unbroken? Unbroken, did you see the movie? Did you like the movie? Blasphemy. The movie was a piece of crap. I'm sorry, the movie was a disgusting insult to the memory of that man because it didn't tell the whole story. It just told the story of some guy who was really strong. It didn't tell the whole story, and it's in the redemption at the end that the truth is evident. C.L. Bryant, I know from his movie Runaway Slave. You must see that movie. I saw that movie, I think, was it 10 years ago? I've not forgotten it. It's that movie. I was so excited to be here with you. Tom, I didn't know you, but you've blessed us so much this evening with your talks. So Eric said yesterday, we only have today. Like, don't think that you're going to save it up and spend it tomorrow. We have today. We've got to get work done today. And so to that, I want to add this. When we talk to children about staying safe, we always tell them, children, the second crime scene is always worse than the first. If you're being abducted, if somebody's trying to get you in the back of their van, you don't get in that van. You scream, you kick, you claw, you bite. You do everything you can to not get in the back of that van. Why? Because the second crime scene's always worse than the first. Ladies and gentlemen, the crime right now is the lie. We're in the first crime scene. You need to be kicking and screaming and biting and clawing against that because they are trying to put you in the back of the van or, as Bonhoeffer might say, in the cattle car. That's what they're trying to do because we don't all want the same thing. We want Christ on earth. We want God's kingdom. They want the opposite of that. So I wanted to ask you if you had questions. And before I do, I'll tell a quick story. Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream from culture. Politics is downstream from culture, and culture is media. Media sets the culture. The politicians are actors performing a play written by the culture. It's sort of a feedback loop, if you will. Well, I knew Andrew Breitbart. And I adored him. He was great. And we used to get into arguments because we both belonged to this sort of clandestine Hollywood group, and he wanted people to be outspoken, and I was trying to save my husband's career. And then he let me off the hook for that. He torpedoed it himself, so that was awesome. But I used to sort of get into these, not arguments, but little fun disagreements things. And he said, "Why don't you write for me?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to. I'll write under a pseudonym." First article I ever wrote under a pseudonym went viral, which was weird. And I sent it to a friend of mine. I was so proud of it, I just sent it to a friend of mine. He said, "Oh, I read this morning. It's very good. Do you know this person?" And I said, "I am that person." He said, "No way." I said, "Yeah." And he said, That's funny. Did you know it's on AOL's front page?" I said, "No." And it was a commentary on the culture. And so I thought, well, if Andrew wants me to write, I'll write for him, but I won't write under a pseudonym because it's dangerous, and I'll just write about something that's not political. So I wrote about education because I was tremendously naive. And then Andrew died. And I realized that I was allowing him to carry my water for me. And I was ashamed. He was a good man. He was strong. If you don't know his story, just look up Anthony Weiner and Andrew Breitbart. It is brilliant. Do I have a minute to tell the story? Because it's such a good story. Anthony Weiner was going to do a press conference. He'd been showing his last name everywhere. And Breitbart had broken the story somehow because the person had contacted him and had sent him whatever, and he'd broken the story. And so Weiner was going to come out and give a press conference denouncing Breitbart and claiming that he was the innocent victim and all of it, blah, blah, blah. And he was late because, the left has so much hubris or no hubris, I guess. So he was late. He was cocky. Sorry. And sorry, I have to make this fun for me too. And so during the press conference, nobody was there. They were waiting for Weiner to show up. So Andrew walked up to the podium and he took all the wind out of Anthony Weiner's sails. He said, "I'm Andrew Breitbart, and you're going to hear about how I broke the story. And I just want to set the record straight because he's not here, so let me just talk to you for a minute. This is how it happened. This is what he's going to claim. That's wrong. It happened this way." And he just totally had his own press conference. That's brilliant. He was a brilliant guy. He used to wear rollerblades and go and talk to liberals and then invite them to lunch. He was what we call a happy warrior. It's one of the words in my book that I define in my book. We ought to be happy warriors because we're on the right side. Are there any questions? Yes. I love that you didn't raise your hand.
So I'm speaking as the artist. So think of your daughter when you're answering this question. So your daughter is the artist, correct?
She's an artist, yes. You can follow her on Instagram. It's MARE_Jade art. But her first name's Octavia, so you could probably find it that way. Go ahead.
When you talk about, when you talk about math, you cannot imagine the kind of disdain that I feel, the kind of anger that I feel, the frustration that I feel. And you say, if I were in a position right now to say, okay, I think I'm going to bring my kids, I'm going to take them out of high school. I've got 2 boys left in high school. I feel like I'm almost through. So I'm one of those, I have to rip them from their soccer teams. I have to take them, it's which I know you go, well, we can do this. But I almost feel like you have to catch people before they get into that. I feel like my sister and her little guys are more of who I'm going to give your book to. And I don't want to seem like I'm completely,
right,
powerless to not do it. But when you talk about you can do math, do you ever say, okay, maybe somebody can't do math, but they
Yes.
find a friend that can teach them math?
Sure. Your children, here's the thing. You do math up until 5th grade.
But I can't even do that.
That's fine. That's fine.
So is that not like, I'm just saying, like, you find a friend.
I talked about the art, right? I talked about the art. She's teaching herself art. That's why we're calling it self-teaching. So your kids are high school. They ought to be teaching themselves. They shouldn't really need you for their math. And if they do, that's a failure of the public schools because the answers are in the book. So the second thing that I want to say is, I don't know about your schools where you are, but there are plenty of schools that will take athletes regardless of if they're actually enrolled in school. So you don't necessarily have to just give up everything when you remove your children from the school. But I will tell you that when you take your children out of school, you are starving the beast, which I really appreciate, because I don't want that money going to those unions, frankly. And that's how it works. Yes, it's easier with younger kids. And with older kids, you have to have that conversation about why we would do this. With my younger kids, when I told them I was going to homeschool them, I had this conversation with them almost every day. I would pick them up from school while I was deciding, and I would say, I know you have homework, but if you were homeschooled, you'd be done already. Like Larry was saying before, you'd be done already. And you find ways to manipulate your children into thinking it's a good idea. Why? And I'm serious. Why do they need to finish high school? What is that going to get them? You don't need to graduate high school to attend college. If they want to attend college, they could start attending college as a high school sophomore. Like, we need to rethink. By the way, college prep and career readiness is a Ponzi scheme. So do I need to explain that? I heard a lot of assents, but it's a Ponzi scheme because college career readiness is a misnomer because they're not ready for a career. Look at Eric. I mean, he's barely surviving, and he went to Yale. He graduated Yale and didn't have a career and had to figure it out afterwards. So it's not career readiness, okay? College prep? What is that? We're going to convince you for 12 years of your life, we're going to drill into you that you need to go spend a crap load of money to maybe hopefully get a job that pays minimum wage, right? Because it's not career readiness. So college prep is a complete misnomer. It's a Ponzi scheme. Do you know what a Ponzi scheme is? It's like a pyramid scheme. You pay in at the bottom, and then you hope that by the time you reach the top, enough dupes like you have paid in at the bottom that you're going to get money out of the top. That's all it is. So you should be having this conversation with your kids. What do you want out of life? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Have they done a cost of living study? Have them do a cost of living study, like what's my job going to be? How much money am I going to earn? What kind of car will I drive? Where will I live? How much will I pay for my apartment? Have them do that study in 10th grade, 9th grade. My daughter just did it in 9th grade. I said to her, I want you to pick a job that pays minimum wage because you want to be an artist. I don't have high hopes for lots of money on that. So pick a job that pays minimum wage because I want you to see that on a minimum wage job, living alone, you can make it work. I want you to work it out and figure it out. And she was like, okay, and then she did it. And then she went, it really wasn't very much fun. So I decided that I'm a YouTube sensation and I'm right? But spur their imaginations, get them thinking of, we don't get kids thinking of the serious things in school. The opposite. We distract them from all the serious things. Because as Eric said, we don't want them looking at the serious things. Because if they look at the serious things and they don't have an answer, it's freaking scary. And it should be, because it is. So let's get our kids thinking about serious things, having those conversations. That's how you form a relationship with your child, is you have those serious conversations. And if you don't have the answers, man up and say, you know what, I don't have the answers. Let's go find out together. Man up, mom up, right? You can do it. Oh, you like that? That was kind of clever, right? Man up, mom up. I like it. One other question, yes? Yes, don't raise your hand. What? After everything.
And, for all the riots, I'm from Minnesota, the county that everything happened last summer.
You guys were targeted. You know that Omar Tlaib was, right? That's her name, right? Ilhan Omar, sorry, yeah, I combined two of them, all of them. Tlaib, Omar, Ocasio-Cortez. Do you understand that they went to a casting and they were cast? They wanted attractive young women. They were cast, they were trained, they ran for office, they were fully funded, and they won. And they ran only in districts that they could win, really crappy districts with a preponderance of votes in their direction anyway, and they won. Come on, folks. Look, everything that the left does is a complete lie. Ocasio-Cortez is brilliant, right? She doesn't know what a disposal is. Joe Biden says that the person he admires most is the guy who snorts Parmesan cheese because he thinks it's Coke. Seriously, that's what our president said. He admires his son the most. His son snorts Parmesan cheese because he thinks it's Coke. Joe Biden said that himself. That's our president. They couldn't give us a president that was like somewhat something. They had to give us the worst. That's how it works. It's not like a namby-pamby middle of the road. It's that disparate at this point. And why Joe Biden? Do you remember what Trump ran on? What was his first platform? Like the one platform he came out and immigration, China. He ran on China. What did Joe Biden and Hunter Biden do when they went over to China to hopefully get the Chinese to lay off on building those military islands in the South China Sea? Did they succeed? Not by our standards, but by their standards. They came away with $1 billion for Hunter Biden, who had no experience in managing funds. So of course they gave us Biden. Because why? China. What was your question? Sorry, Larry.
When we hear about institutional racism, and we had the riots last summer and all of that, the city of Minneapolis public schools probably spend more per pupil than anywhere in the universe because it's Minnesota and they do.
Okay.
Those schools have some of the biggest disparities for children of color versus Caucasians. They don't take attendance because then they get their money for the children.
Right.
Because they're there. And they are the most institutional racism.
Question.
Do you see that as institutional racism?
Oh, the Democrats have institutionalized racism. The Democrats have institutionalized racism. I mean, that's what I say to that. We don't have institutional racism in this nation. We have, you go to a bank, if the bank teller is not your same skin color, do you go, well, I'm not cashing my check here. I want to see somebody who looks just like me. No, we don't have that. That's what they're claiming. But do they institutionalize racism? Yes, because they're the worst racists of them all. And they've always been racist. And our the inner city public schools are pipelines straight to prison. And that's on purpose. And it's a disgrace.
But nobody has talked about the schools in the whole scheme of the last summer with George Floyd, all of that. Nobody talked about the schools.
Well, I did, but nobody was listening, so. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I want you guys, I'm going to leave you with some action points because everybody wants to be told what to do these days. Stop it! Make it up. I was going to ask you guys what you can do. I want to challenge you. What steps can you take? I want you to leave here thinking, okay, I'm going to not shop at Starbucks. Small steps, big steps. I'm going to host a book club, and we're going to do Abolition of Man, because that's a great place to start, because it's C.S. Lewis, so it's not political, and you can invite your friends. And, I'm sorry, what? Shout it out. No more Starbucks. And join, make a club, the non-Starbucks club, and find another cafe to go to. And frequent your local businesses, frequent small businesses, because they need our support right now more than ever. The federal government is paying people not to work more than they could earn working. That doesn't hurt big business, that hurts small business. The federal government is in competition with the backbone of the United States economy. We should be speaking out about that and holding our representatives accountable and telling our representative, you turn down federal money that way. We don't want that money here. That money's no good for our state. We want our state back up on top, right? Let's see. Run for office. Good. Run for office. Run again. Get people to go to conferences. Get people to join you at conferences like this. They're popping up everywhere. Just find them and go. They're fun, right? Be a co-belligerent. I love that term. Be a co-belligerent. Stand with people, even if you disagree with them. And I'll tell you, the atheists kind of put us to shame. Because when my pastor, Rob McCoy, stood up to our county and said, I'm opening my church because you haven't proven to me that you have authority over me and I serve God, not government, they came down hard on him. And the day they said they were coming to arrest him, the atheists showed up. And they stood in the church. And they listened to the sermon because they wanted to stand with Rob McCoy on the grounds of free speech. First Amendment, because First Amendment applies to everybody. And by the way, the First Amendment is not supported by evolution. It just isn't. Join organizations. There's Moms for America, there's Moms for Liberty, there's Freedom Works, Eagle Forum, Tea Parties. Find an organization, join it, meet people. We need to form communities. I will tell you, follow my fellow speakers on social media. And I'm not advocating for social media, but the more followers they get, the more likes, it just helps. It helps when you go and you see somebody tweet something that's like, ooh, is that true or is that correct or whatever, and you see that the people who follow that person have liked it, it helps, especially when they're speaking truth. Now, obviously, you have to test it for truth, but it helps in the marketplace of ideas when the wishy-washy namby-pambies look at it and they go, well, gee, it got 140,000 likes. It must have some credibility, right? Absolutely. Yeah, follow Daily Wire. Be discerning in where you get your news, right? Daily Wire, Epoch Times, EPOCH, Epoch Times, and those are the people that carry my show. My show's also on Liftable Media. Liftable Media is a Christian-based media company that will only show Christian media, or Christian-friendly media, I should say. Let's see. You can go to sorbos.org. That's our website where we show what we're doing in movies. You can support us. We're fundraising right now. We're trying to raise $2 million. I think we're very close to put our new movie into theaters. It's a comedy. Sorbos.org. With an S, plural, because there's more than one. Sorbos.org. Movie's called Miracle in East Texas. Tells the true story of the East Texas oil strike. It's a story of redemption and forgiveness. It's a beautiful story. We tell it as a comedy, so it's a lot of fun. And it's a pro-oil story, which is what I really liked. It's pro-oil, pro-freedom, pro-entrepreneurship. It's a great story. If you go to the website, you can sign up for our newsletter. We will be organizing a trip to Israel next year. I'm excited about that. That's in May. And the last time we went, we got such a great group together and just had a blast. I was going to start with this. Blessed are the meek. And, I talked a lot today about words and how they're changing our definitions of words. Blessed are the meek. What does that mean? Does anybody know the definition of the word meek? Restrained power. Does that fit with your definition? No. Power bridled.
The historic definition is a horse, like a wild horse that's been tamed is actually meek. And so that's what I see that as that we're supposed to be wild in faith, but we've been meek by Jesus himself. So.
Thank you. I just learned something. Did you learn something just now? The horse analogy, the bridled horse, yes, the horse that has been tamed, very powerful, under control. My definition of meek is power under control. And yet, what do most people think meek is? Blessed are the weak. There's a reason, right? Can I get an amen? There's a reason that they've changed the meaning of that word for us. Christians, for us Christians, we should know better. Moses said, I am meek. He parted the Red Sea. Jesus said, I am meek. He was Jesus Christ. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. We are called to meekness. We are called to be powerful, under control. And so when somebody says to you something like, well, blessed are the weak, blessed are the meek, because, we should be weak and reclining, say, that word doesn't mean what you think it means. So I leave you with that. Be meek. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Thank you so much.